Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant, John Solleder. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Well, hello, everybody. It's John Solleder with the Leaving Nothing to Chance podcast network. And we are going to do something very different today, very unique today. My good friend, Joe Garcia, icon, legend in the industry, tremendous leader, tremendous wealth of not only talent, ability, experience, came to me a few weeks ago and he said, hey, John, it would be fun to put you on the other side of the camera. So today, we're going to do the first, and we'll probably do this a couple of times, Joe, with yourself, and I'm thinking maybe a couple other of our friends in the industry, where they get to ask me questions. So I'm looking forward to, this side of it. Don't be too tough on me, okay? I'm just asking the questions. But
I've been known to use a big whip, globally.
I'm afraid of that. It's not that far from Toronto to Dallas these days, But Joe, it's a pleasure. Appreciate the great idea, and I'll turn the call over to you.
John, the reason why I came up with this idea because there's very few people in the industry that has your story, and you're one of the few guys that I actually look up to in the industry. We just recently met. We have never crossed paths, even though you lived in my area for a long time. And, obviously you got started a lot earlier than I did in the industry. You go way back in the 80s. So I thought it would be a great idea to pick your brain. Because typically with myself is I've learned over the years just by asking questions. For example, when my wife and I were getting married 35 years ago, we had to take this marriage course. Our church made us take this marriage course. And I was really bothering the teachers of that course. Like I had millions of questions, and that's how I learned. And I take the great answers. So for example, one of the questions I asked back then was there was a couple that appeared to have an incredible relationship. They were married like 40 plus years by that time. And I asked them, what was the number one reason why you guys had a great marriage? You know what he told me? He says, Joe, every day I have told my wife that I loved her. Sometimes I didn't feel like it. A lot of times I didn't feel like it, he said. But it was a consistent action I did every day that improved our relationship. And I can see what it's done to our marriage over the last 40 years. And I thought, oh my God, that's incredible. Consistent action over time equals results. And that's what I started to do. And we are going to celebrate in southern Spain our 35th anniversary, where we had our honeymoon, in Costa del Sol in September. So based on this theme, of asking the expert, the legend, I always tell people that I'm too young to be called a legend, and you're getting there. You're getting there, John. Over the years, tell me the differences between the young John to the John today.
Oh, boy. Young John didn't know what he didn't know, and it made me dangerous to myself. And what I mean by that is I walked away from several opportunities that I had invested my time, my energy, and even in some cases my money in. And I walked away too early, prematurely, because of either ego or arrogance on my part, or just feeling like, hey, I can go do this again. And I've been blessed that I've been able to do it again. But I made some mistakes. I made some honest mistakes that I could counsel young people that, look, don't walk away too early, because our business, all business, not just our business, you and I know our industry, but it's probably no different in real estate or automobile sales or travel sales or insurance or whatever. It's a roller coaster. And, today you're not getting along with somebody and you say, I can't work with this person, I'm out of here. And all of a sudden, a week or two later, you realize, oh man, I made a crucial mistake. And I did that early in my career. I had a percentage of sales in a company here in Dallas, building it on the corporate end from the sales standpoint. And I literally got upset with the owner, and he got upset with me, and we were good friends. And rather than us settling it, we just had our egos in the way. He did and I did. And I walked away. and cost me a fortune. But more than that, it cost me an opportunity, not just the money. The money I would make more of in my life, but it cost me the opportunity to do some of the things that I could have done with that company that may have kept that company on the straight and narrow. And unfortunately, I chose to leave, and that was my decision. And you got to own your decisions in life, okay? Not just in our business, but in life. So that was a mistake on my part. This John would never do that. This John would find a way to say, whoa, let's sit down and talk. It's kind of like when I look at the political scene right now in the world. If people are talking to each other rather than at each other, there's a big difference in what gets done. If you sit at a table with another human being and you share a meal, or you share a cup of coffee, or you share time, most importantly, you can get a lot of things done. Historically, when I look at people like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, when the United States in the early 80s, when I started in network marketing, just getting out of college, those guys were basically running the Republican and Democratic Party here in the United States. They didn't agree on a lot of stuff, but they were able to sit down at the White House and have a beer together on a consistent basis for the good of not only their parties, but more importantly, the good of the country. And that's what I learned along the way is it's better to sit down with somebody, whether it's physically, if you can, of course, if you're geographically removed, get on the same page. Say, hey, man, I got a problem with how you're doing stuff or how you're saying stuff, or maybe you have a problem with how I'm doing stuff. Tell me what it is and let me own it, because I can't have every perspective. So I ask people to give me their perspective on what I could do better in my life. One other thing I learned too, and I learned this for a short time when I stepped out of the industry for a short time in the early 80s. One of the things I learned was ask somebody why they didn't buy from you. It's a valuable lesson. Just like, you get a sale, you feel great, right? You get on the phone, you brag to your wife, hey, I made a sale, right? I recruited a new distributor. I sold some product, right? Yeah, you feel good. What about when the person doesn't buy? Is it something that you could have done better, or was it just something that, hey, they rejected it for financial reasons, or it just wasn't something they were looking for? Those are some of the lessons that I've learned over these 40 plus years of doing network marketing that are invaluable, not only to myself now, but to younger people that I counsel and coach.
So you talked about ego, and from what I got from your answer there, ego played a large role in that decision and other decisions. Do you think that's just a young thing? That's something that we have to learn, or it's just who you were at the time?
Combination thereof, and I also felt like I could just do this again and again and again. And, the 35-year-old me versus the 62-year-old me. 35, I was just, full of, P and V. You know what I mean? I got up in the morning and all I wanted to do was work. And the 62-year-old me is a little smarter than that, because I don't have that level of energy or, frankly, that desire anymore. There's other things I desire to do with my time besides network marketing that I invest my time in between my faith, one of the ministries that we're involved with, and also, of course, in my family, my workouts, all the other things that I want to spend time doing preclude me from wanting to go and build a company from scratch and work from 8 a.m. till faint at night, so to speak, right? You know the old hours, Joe, right? 8 to faint. You remember that statement? I don't know who said it first, but it's a great statement. But that's the way I was in my 20s and 30s and even my early 40s. And that's what it took to build a company. Frankly, you had to work that hard.
Yeah. So you're into your second marriage, correct, John?
Yeah.
I think this is a very important question. Our philosophy, when it comes down to it, I remember when I first got started in the industry, this was back in June 23rd, 1993. Just recently celebrated my 30th year. I can't believe it. And over again, I'd get this concept. Every speaker, every leader that I went to, that I saw training from, or an audio tape, back then we were listening to audio tapes, was the concept, you got to pay the price for success. And I had thought to myself, I don't want my family, because at that time I was just newly married. I was 5 years into a marriage, just became a father. And I don't want my family to pay the price for my vision, for my work ethic, for my high achiever philosophy. And I kept on asking myself, how can I do this, create a balanced life, and reach my dreams in my business world? because I'm doing it for my family. But ultimately, there's an ego part of us, for those high achievers. We want to get to the top, and nothing is good enough for getting to the top. And when we reach the top, we want more and more and more. And that's has to do with our ego part of ourselves, or how we're wired, So with you, over the years, how did you balance? And so, for example, going back to the question, to my answer is I didn't want my wife to pay the price for my success, or my kids. So I promised them as I started to travel that I would never travel for more than 1 week. So that was my commitment to them. And for the more 99.9% of the time, I managed to do that, over and over again, because my family, in my hierarchy of needs and wants and my values in life was number one to me. So how have you changed over the years with balancing that high achieving mentality to, getting the job done, becoming successful, reaching your financial goals, and still have an incredible family life?
Well, Joe, it's both a sad story and one I hope nobody listening to the show ever goes through, but I'm sure some people unfortunately have.
And guys, just to interrupt, prior to this podcast, and I did not share, John, that I was going to ask him this question.
Yeah, but important. It's a great question.
It's a challenging thing to create balance. And there is a perception or a belief out there you can't be successful without paying the price, and your family paying the price. And you see a lot of marriages break up because of that.
Absolutely. Because, when I had kids, it's a sad story how it happened. I met Jose, my wife now of 21 years. We, right off the bat, because I was already in my early 40s, we wanted to have a family. And she had a daughter from a previous relationship that I adopted, and it's my daughter now, coming, she's 28, exactly, California. And anyway, so I started out with a ready-made family, so to speak, but I still wanted to have my own kids biologically. And we conceived a child. Well, unfortunately, about 8.5 months into the pregnancy, we lost. And at that point, I was still very narcissistic. I was still about business being the only priority. Yeah, family, all that was important, but business came first. And it made me super successful, but it also cost me some of the valuable things in life. And I'll give you a couple of things that happened. When we lost that child, I decided right then and there, got on my knees and, talked to my Lord and Savior and said, listen, if you give me children, because I'm not sure I could have more. I'm not sure that this wasn't something wrong with me. And we never found out, by the way, what the cause of death was. But if you bless me with kids, I'm going to put them first. I'm going to make sure that they are my priority. And I did that. And exactly 1 year later, Joe, New Year's Eve, 2002, my son Frederick was born. 1 year. 1 year. He was born early, by the way. And, it just turned out to be maybe an amazing kid and doing some fake stuff on the internet and network marketing and just really doing very well, and going to SMU now and studying coding and just all kinds of stuff, off the charts. Good kid, real proud of him. And then my daughter Grace came along, not even a year later, 11 months later. And when they got involved with athletics, hockey and figure skating, I never missed an event. And I was so tenacious about that I was in Colombia for the opening of our company on a Friday night, 4,000 screaming, yelling Colombians. And at 6 o'clock the next morning, I was on a flight to Toronto because my son had a game at noon that afternoon, and he didn't know I was coming. And I hopped that plane, and I got there about 5 minutes before a face-off. And as I walk into the arena, he turns around, he sees me, and it's just like, like my dad's here. He knew I was in Colombia because I talked to him the day before. That level of commitment, and I'm not saying every parent can do that or can afford to do that, but that was my commitment that I wouldn't miss their games. I wouldn't miss their events, and their life events, not just their sporting events. I'm an athlete. I'm a jock my whole life, so I love sports. But at the end of the day, Grace was in an acting thing here in Dallas, for example. And I had a meeting. I think I was in Los Angeles, and same thing, hopped the plane because she had a thing the next day. It was like, sometimes you're there with toothpicks in your eyes, but I made that a priority that my kids were going to come before everything else. And we've had our challenges, with kids like everybody does, but they're all on the straight and narrow. They're all doing well. Grace will start at the University of Texas at Dallas right about when this show airs, Joe. So she'll be at UTD, and Freddie will be at SMU, and Camille's doing well out in California. So, we're blessed. But I took that responsibility very, very serious. That's more serious than I ever took business. I took business extremely serious, but I took my family that much more serious and their endeavors, supporting them not only financially, but supporting them from a standpoint of communication. How can I help you? Or is this something you're struggling with? Do you need coaching? Do you need, some level of assistance that you're not getting at school or from the coaching staff? What is it that you need that I can help you with? And, that's been really, really important to me and valuable.
I think the lesson here, John, and I would recommend everyone do this, is write down your values. What are the most important thing, your top 10 list? A lot of times what happens with marriage couples, for example, the male in the relationship would have freedom in the top 5, whereas the female in the relationship would have security in the top 5. So can you imagine the conflict there? Freedom and security, and where they're fighting always about money, because the guy wants to go for it, the freedom, where all she's focused on, make sure the kids are fed, roof over their head. That's the most important thing. So what you've done there is subconsciously you automatically put your family first. And then your business life, you made it work. So you didn't want your kids to pay. You wanted to be that dad was there for everything. So same with me. I wanted to be that dad. That's why I worked from home. That was the number one dream I had back in 1993 when I manifested this industry. Is my dream was to work from home. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I met a gentleman in a library that introduced me to this industry, and I thought, wow, I could work from home. And so going back to that comment about paying the price for success, you subconsciously and consciously at that moment in your early 40s, when you became a dad, made a conscious, whether it was a vision or a decision, you consciously said, my family's the most important. I'm going to make this work. I'm going to take every event. I'm not going to miss it. And I think this is important for all of us, for those that are really high achievers, that you can manifest anything you want in life. You can manifest an incredible family with a great business at the same time and reaching your goals and dreams. It is all possible. And you're a great example of that, John, a great example.
Yeah, the business is a means to an end. Because at the end of the day, if you have a super successful business, but your kids, you have no other relationship with, well, what have you gained? Okay, I mean, that's what's valuable as we get older is our relationships, not only with our friends and our colleagues, but most importantly with our family and our kids. And, we've gone through things in our family where they've been divisive. There's been some divisiveness over the years, things that have happened. Our oldest daughter, unfortunately, got involved with drugs at one point, and we had to put her in a rehab facility. And, you say, gee, how are you blessed by being in network marketing? Well, she didn't have to go to the county hospital. She went to the best rehab facility in the state of Texas. And 30 days later, she walked out of there and she used something that I learned from Larry Thompson, right? It's a statement, right? Day at a time, brick at a time, process by process. And she grew up, because she was older than her brother and sister, she grew up going to meetings with me. She'd be my date, she'd go to stuff with me, right? And she would hear me say that over and over. She'd hear Larry say that over and over. She'd hear other people say that over and over. And we're leaving that drug rehab place after 30 days of hell, Joe. I mean, it's hell what these kids go through and put themselves through. It's their bad decision that put them there. And stuff beside of that. But at the end of the day, she turned to me and we're getting in the car. And she says, Dad, I know how I'm going to beat this thing. I'm like, how's that, Camille? She says, day at a time, brick at a time, process by process. And I shared that at an event in April here in Dallas with my organization, a big event here. And a lady wrote to me the other day about how much that helped her with one of her children that's going through something similar. So, it's not just our experience that we hold important for our families, but it's what we share with our organizations and with other people in our industry and other people that aren't in our industry for that matter. that inspire them and give them some of the tools that they need to deal with a crisis. Because, sometimes people look like at you, they look at me, they look at some of the people that I interview on this show, and they say, wow, they make a lot of money, they make houses, they drive fancy cars, and da, da, da. Yeah, all true. But at the end of the day, we're human beings. We have the same struggles. We might have more money in the bank than a lot of people do. But at the end of the day, we have the same struggles going on with our families, with ourselves, with our health, with all the other things that every other human being does. The difference, I think, is because we practice self-development on a daily basis because we're leaders of teams of people, that some of those self-development tools carry over to people who are not inclined to be in our business, but they hear them, like my daughter, who's not in our industry, heard those statements as a kid, and it helped her in a critical time in her life.
Yes, and that's a great lesson for people in business, especially in the network marketing industry. When people ask me, Joe, what's your number one success secret of all time? The first one is you got to fall in love with your dream. But combined with that is that I consistently did the money-making activities over the last 30 years. Every single day, no matter where I was in the world, what I was doing, my on-site in my business was open for business. And that consistently of sharing the product and sharing the business and working on myself, 30 years later, process by process, has determined my results. The things that I was doing back 30 years ago has affected my results today. And because I've consistently, so whatever distractions came my way, John, I was able to overcome them. And there's been massive distractions over time. But I just looked at it and, okay, I could jump over that one. I could jump over that one. I could jump over that one because I was just consistent. Also consistent with emotions. And that's a great segue into the next topic. And it's when you're in business and there's a lot of money being involved, especially in our industries, a huge amount of relationships that we have, and people end up betraying those relationships. And it becomes very disappointing, especially with a guy like yourself who cares a lot about people, has a big heart. And when people have betrayed you, how have you dealt with that? What's your process?
After my initial anger, which, to be honest with you, I had to deal with over the years, different times where people have betrayed me, be it financially or they're in your company, they're in your downline, you introduce them, you elevate them to leadership, you tell everybody what a superstar they are, and then all of a sudden they run off to some flaky pyramid scheme that's not even legal. And you say, wow, how can they be so stupid, number one? And the value. So, without even discussing it with you, and I'm not talking any particular case here, but I've seen this happen over 41 years almost now. And not even saying, hey, John, look, here's what I'm thinking of doing. And I get if you're not making money where you are, that you need to make money. I respect that. Somebody makes an honest move to another company, but make an honest move. Don't betray the contact capital that you've developed with other people in your company that are in other people's downlines by moving somewhere else and all of a sudden trying to take everybody with you. That's wrong. That's unethical. That's immoral, in my opinion. And I've seen that happen repeatedly. So first I get angry and I go to the gym and I hit the heavy bag for about a half hour, and then I get that out of my system. And then I say, okay, well, let's look at it this way. If I know that my course is right, okay, if I know that I'm going with the grain, so to speak, and not against it, if I know that my company is good, if I know that my product is good, if I know my marketing plan is good, if I know that we're legal with regulatory people, et cetera, as best you can be in a regulatory environment like we both deal in. But at the end of the day, if I know I'm with a good company with good people, I'm going to say my course and continue to preach my message. And I don't care what anybody else does. And that's the way that I've gotten through some of the initial angst of people betraying trust. And, it's tough. It's tough because you feel let down because, what happens too is you build relationships, you eat meals with people, you hang out with people, you spend time on trips with people, and then all of a sudden they betray you. Now, I don't mind, once again, somebody leaving because they have to make a living. I mind somebody leaving and how they do it. There's a way to do it. For example, when I left this company in Dallas, I resigned and I never called a person. Not because I was afraid the company owner would sue me, which he probably would have. But at the end of the day, it was like I came into a business, I made relationships based on a company that somebody else started. And when I left and took the high road. And because of that, everything that I've done since, I've never had an issue. Nobody's ever said, well, that guy's unethical, or that guy did this, or that guy did that. And I'm glad to have that reputation. And as my son enters into this industry and gets to know people like yourself and Dan McCormick and Larry Taylor Thompson and Keith Hooper and all the people that he's met, including, the ownership of my company and management of my own company, I'm glad I have that reputation. Okay. And I'll continue to have that reputation until I go to the grave, is that, look, I'm going to do what I think is the right thing. It might not always be the right thing, but I'm going to do the right thing, and I'm going to stay the course, okay, because I know what I have is legal, moral, and ethical. People need it. And I don't know that necessarily where somebody else goes that they have that same circumstance. So, and maybe they do. Maybe they have something better. I don't know. What I do know is a right way and a wrong way how to leave a relationship. It's funny. My wife sometimes gives me a hard time. I probably shouldn't say this on camera. Hopefully she will listen to the interview. She probably will. I'm still friends with a lot of my ex-girlfriends. Some of them are on Facebook. I talk to them. I watch their kids grow up. I watch them remarry and stuff. And people are like, how can you be friends with your ex-girlfriends? Because there's a right way and a wrong way how to leave a relationship. If you were,
she listens to this.
Exactly. Oh, big time. But no, she knows it. She actually respects it in a weird way. But she's French Canadian, Joe. Should I see more? But a little anger issue there sometimes. But the reality is, because you leave a relationship the right way with somebody, that you're honest with them, and then they move on their life, you move on your life, and it's like, hey, you respect each other. I've had friends that have left my company that I'm still friends with. Some that I've interviewed on the show, for that matter, okay, and left for other companies. But they did it the right way. Okay, so the right way and the wrong way how to do anything in life. And I think if we do it the right way, hey, you can hold your head up and say, hey, not everything's for everybody. If there was only one company in our industry, it starts with an A and it's up in Ada, Michigan, and you wouldn't be in your company, I wouldn't be in mine, our listeners wouldn't be in there. So not everything's for everybody, and that's okay. But do it with class. That's what it comes down to. Just go.
Yeah, it goes back to the values, John. And with me, loyalty is in my top 5. I'm extremely loyal. Like if you type in Joe Garcia on Google, yeah, I'm battling a famous artist and a congressman in Florida, for the top Google searches. Anyways, you'll see that Joe, I've been in my present company now for 22 years. The sister company prior to that was that merged it to us. So total 27 years, but the loyalty, because I'm extremely loyal, because I know what my values are, I've never strayed from that. So for example, if I end up going into that situation, yes, how you move on, how you communicate that is so important, because you don't want to burn bridges. Because there's a law of karma. What we do unto others will always come back to us. Will always. So, for example, I'll give you a great story the other day. A woman from Mexico, who was a long-time contact of mine through Russia, moved to Mexico. She reconnected with me, and she's been on your product for the last 5-6 months. And she's not too sure where she wants to go, because and I didn't know that story. And she was a prospect, very high regarded, very, the type of person you want to enroll in your business, right? And as soon as I heard that she was taking your product, I backed off. And I thought it was weird. I go, no, because I have a great friend, John, who's in that company. He's probably in your upline. And I'm not going to, I encourage you to stay there. I encourage you, the product's working for you, stay there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because of loyalty, because of my values that I understand very clearly.
Well, thank you for that, Joe. But, and it just shows, not only your ethics, but I feel the same way. Look, we're in an industry that has some great companies. It has some great products. So the same thing, when I hear somebody's in a great company, and whether I have a friend in the company or not, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But it's like, you're in a great company. Why would you want to make a move? You know what I mean? Stay where you are, stay the course, because you're building a financial fortress around your family. And that's the priority. As much as I'd love to have you with me, I have to defer to, you're in a great company. Now, if you're in some silly company that you go, hey, I know about that company, it's got no future and it's got no money and it's not going to be here, that's a different story. But I'm a fan of our industry. The reason I started this show was to support our industry and to give back some of the knowledge, people like yourself and some of the other people that I've interviewed over the last couple of years. They give it for free. Like, we've never charged for anything. We never will charge for anything. Yeah, you want to buy my books? Yeah, you're going to pay for them because you got to pay Jeff Bezos because he sells them. But at the end of the day, we do it to give back because we believe in this industry. It's been good to your family. It's been good to my family. It's been good to a lot of our colleagues' families. So we want to give back that knowledge and information, not only for the current generation, but for that next generation, for your kids and grandkids as they come up, that there's a great industry out there with many choices of many companies where somebody says, hey, this company doesn't fit me because I don't like that product category, but this company over here has a product category that really I feel comfortable with. I'm going to go do that. Hey, I'm your biggest fan. How can I help you?
Yes. And we are actually the industry. The people are the industry. How we act, react, share, and help people is all about us. We are the reflection of the industry. So, John, one of the challenges over the years, this is a two-part question that I've seen in leadership, and I've dealt with it, is as you start to make money, the entire team starts to think that you're a bank. And you start to, people with good hearts, we always want to help people. Over the years, everyone that I've lent money to has never paid me back, within the organization. And it's a sign of betrayal, sign of trust. We did it all for the right reasons. So one of the things that I did in our business with my business partner, Dan, maybe 10 years ago, is we just cut the line and said, we're not banks. Because if you do it for one person, you got to do it for a second, a third, a fifth, a tenth. You got to be consistent in leadership. And we just said, look, we're putting our foot down. We're not going to lend money to anybody in the team. That's our philosophy, and this is the reason why. So how have you dealt with that? I know a while back we've had the similar conversations about you lending money, no one paying you back.
Nobody's paid me back yet.
Yes. And it hurts relationships, no matter how hard you work on them, because it is actually a sign of betrayal. Because one of my leadership rules is you always have to follow through with your promises. You can do something right for 9 years straight, but on that 9th year, you break a promise, there goes the trust. People don't focus on the hundreds of things that you did right for them. It's that one thing that they'll focus on. So how have you dealt with that?
Two ways. Number one, like yourself, I've never been paid back. I've lent all sorts of money for 40 years for everything from somebody's getting a family member sick to, I'm doing this or I'm doing that and I need support. I guess in the cases where I still will get money for something, it's got to be very specific. In other words, if somebody says, I'm doing an event and I need some extra product because, let's say it's a sporting event, for example, and I need some extra product. Can you help me out a little bit? Well, I throw somebody, depending on who it is. Okay. They have to be somebody I have a financial relationship with in the business. It can't be somebody on my, 63rd level. Will I help them depending on the circumstance? Send me the information of what it is you're doing. Show me the event that you're doing, that you're supporting. And can I help you out a little bit? That'll be up to me. And don't ask me for specifics. I'll do what I can if I can do anything. And I leave it at that. And sometimes I do because I'll say, hey, this person's really doing an event. And sure, I'll throw a couple of extra boxes of our product. Most of the time, though, I decline it for the same reason you do. It becomes a thing where it's over and over again. I've never borrowed money from anybody in this industry. Not even when I started, not even my parents. They didn't have it. They would have told me no anyway. I started. I went out. I did what my sponsor told me to do. Right? I bought $800 of product. Okay. I got a 42% discount on that. I went out and I retailed it. The first 7 days I was in the business, I had all my money back and a profit. And all of a sudden it was like I was working from cash flow rather than somebody else's money that I was then beholden to. I never want to be beholden to anybody. One other example, when I first looked at my current company 26 years ago, the owner invited me to come up, and I was going to bring a friend of mine who was a chiropractor here in Dallas, and I was going to bring another friend of mine from Toronto, and he offered to pay, my travel and my friend's travel. And I declined it because I didn't want to, if I got there and I didn't like what I was going to look at, I wanted to be able to shake hands, say, thank you for your time, be on my way. And I didn't want to feel like, the guy paid for this or paid for that. I kind of owe the guy, right? So I never wanted to be that. Biblically, by the way, we should never owe anybody money. Okay? I mean, it's so that is way back.
Again, that goes back to your values.
Exactly. So, but that's what. But here's the other thing, because sometimes somebody comes with charity. Well, when you have an organization like you do or I do, where you're talking 7 figures of human beings, humanity, everybody's got a kid in Girl Scouts, Little League.
100%.
Everybody. So I kind of had to draw the line too and just say no to people. And it's not no out of anything else. It's like, look, we tithe, we do our 10% tithe to what we feel is important. And we just had to say to other people, hey, look, you know what? I'd love to help you, but I just can't, because to your point, Joe, if I help you,
it'll help everybody else.
And Mary hears it, and Mary says, well, will you help Susie with her Little League outfit? Why won't you help me with my Girl Scout troop? And then Bob hears it and says, well, I'm coaching a soccer team, and we need new shirts, John. And before you know it, you're writing checks for all sorts of things. And it's not, look, you're self-employed. It's not your responsibility to do that. Let them get that from the community, from the grandparents, from your circle of influence, not from you, because they say, well, you make money, you're the upline, therefore you're obligated to pay all this stuff. Absolutely not.
One of the lessons I learned when my business started going international, I'd go into these places, and one of the great aspects of building an organization is the relationship building. So usually after every event, especially if you go to Europe or throughout Asia, they want to go out to dinner, and that's where the real business is being done, is in those interviews. So no matter how many people showed up, like 20, 30, 40 people, I would pay the bill. I was happy to do that. It was just, it was just who I was, right? So what happened is, as my leaders started to go into those markets to support their teams, the local leadership would expect them to pay for the dinners. So one day I got a call from one of my leaders, says, Joe, you got to stop doing what you're doing, is because I can't do, I'm not making the money you're making right now, and I can't afford to put down $2,000 per dinner. And then I thought, oh my God, what I'm doing is not duplicatable. Mm-hmm. So we instituted a law. It's another leadership law that we have in the organization where doesn't everywhere around the world, you go out to dinner, everyone pays their way. And that was much more duplicatable than just me doing or my business partner Dan and just paying everything, So
we're on the same page 100% on that one, because I learned that early in my career too. It's like, you went out to dinner with, people you didn't even know, that you'd find out afterwards, some of them hadn't even joined the company. They were friends of somebody's, and next thing you know, you've got a dinner tab for a couple $1,000, and it's like, and it's not only not duplicatable, but my theory is they're going to eat today anyway, whether they're going to eat at home or they're going to eat out. You need to tell them, hey, you tell the waiter, hey, everybody's kind of on their own here. I might be sitting at the head of the table, but that's the case. Unless it's something, once again, if it's a recognition type of thing, for example, time to time I'll go into a city where somebody's hit a rank, and it's like I'm taking their spouse out to dinner, and I'm like, hey, you want to bring one? Yeah, you want to bring one or two of your team with you? Hey, don't worry, it's on me. But not, you can't bring the whole team. It's just not realistic. There's a reason why company owners have to charge for events, by the way.
Very true. Very true. So it's another great segue. I should have been an interviewer in my life, right? No,
you did a great job.
Everything of network marketing. So, I'm just going through all my experiences over the years, and a few years back, one of my top leaders making, serious money, asked me for a $50,000 loan. and she was making much more than that per month. And she had a lot of influence in the team, in the organization. And at that level, because I knew her personality, I was in the leadership dilemma. If I lend her the money, if I didn't lend her the money or find a solution to that, she would leave just out of that, just because of her ego. There was a good chance of doing it. Obviously, I didn't want that to happen. And I thought, oh my God, I'm actually contributing to her financial mismanagement. So if I lend the money out to her, I'm not helping her. I'm temporarily helping her. So I'm thinking, I got to help her. And this is where I started really a number of years ago, helping my leaders when they start to get to 5 figures a month and more, to have a financial plan. So one of the things I did very well in my network marketing career, in my business career, is I got to a lifestyle that my wife and I were really comfortable with. And I invested the difference. I didn't get too crazy in anything. My rule of thumb was, John, if that thing didn't, for example, that car didn't give me joy, I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't make that investment because it's a horrible investment. So that was my rule of thumb. If it didn't give me joy, I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't invest in it. If it gave me joy, no matter how much it was, I would buy it. It was like my first $2,000 suit. I grew up thinking, my dad used to tell me that, Joe, a $100 suit, the same thing as a $2,000 suit. Not really. Or people say, well, you're paying for the brand name. Yeah, in a lot of cases, you may be paying a lot more for the brand name. But when I put that $2,000 suit on, I walked differently because I knew what I paid for it. It was just an incredible sending the right signals through that part of the brand that made me feel good about myself. You know what I mean? So I ended up going over her finances, and, she was living in a 15,000 square foot home with just her and her husband. Okay. They literally needed to use their cell phones to communicate in their own. She had 5 cars in her garage that she never used. And over and over and over again, I just started going through all of her expenses. And I realized quickly, why she was in financial challenges, despite the money she was making. So you have some great, incredible financial advice. You spent some time in the insurance industry, which I'm sure that really helped you. So what's your financial advice, philosophy?
Well, let's start there. I joined my first company in college, 1983. By 1985, it had a problem with the Food and Drug Administration, and it basically blew up. So the business was untenable. You couldn't build it in 1985. And that company survived. It's still one of the great companies in the industry. But at the end of the day, you couldn't build it in 1985. So I get in the life insurance business with Metropolitan Life in New York. And I'm still a kid. I'm still in my early 20s. So I would sit down with people who were now, our age, 40s, 50s, 60s. And I would have to, now in those days, of course, they weren't even laptops yet. So you got all their financial data. I'd go back to my office. I'd run it through this huge Honeywell computer system, plug in, their stocks, their bonds, their mutual funds, their retirement savings, their the equivalent of 401ks in the United States now. If they were self-employed, their separate retirement plan that they may have had, everything that they had. And I'd come up with a number. So I'd come back and I'd say, to you and your wife, Mr. and Mrs. Garcia, let me show you what you're going to have in your retirement years when you hit 65. Because back then, 65 was the magic number. Joe, I'm not lying, 9 out of 10 times to people I went to in northern New Jersey and southern New York State where I was working, I had to tell them, you got to sell your house. You can't live here. Because they didn't save anything. They worked 35, 40 years. Honorable, good people. They paid their taxes. They sent their kids to school. They went to church on Sunday mornings. But at the end of the day, they forgot to do something else. Financial stewardship of paying themselves first. Take that 10% and put it aside. Put it into a separate retirement plan if you're self-employed like we are. If you're not, you can put it in any other financial vehicle. You guys have RRSPs here in Canada. We have Roth IRAs here in the United States. Put it away because retirement will come. God willing, you live long enough. The retirement age will come. And if you haven't saved any money, you are in big trouble today, right? Secondly, save money for your kids. Now, what do I mean by that? When Freddie and Grace were young, I started to save in what was called 529Cs. They're financial instruments that Congress created so that you could put money away for your children's education, and you could offset some of your taxes, like what you put in, about a third of it, you got a tax deduction for. And ultimately, they would use the money. Well, here we are now, 2 kids, 2 really great colleges, SMU and UTD, okay? Really expensive colleges, okay? Well, guess what? I'm not writing a check. The insurance company's writing a check because I put that money aside over the years. Now, did I put it all aside at once? No. I put 500 here, 100 there. Hey, Jose, we got an extra $1,000. Let's put it in Fred's account. Let's put it in Gracie's account. So we saved that money so that here we are now, where they're in college, and their college is paid for. So God forbid I drop dead tomorrow, they'll have their educations, okay? That was the second thing. So retirement money, number one, about 10% of your income you need to be saving on a monthly basis. Number 2, if you do have children, save for their college education while they're young, and do it where you're not going to miss the money. Do it where you say, hey, you know what? Do we really need to go to Starbucks or Tim Hortons 3 times a week? No, let's go once. Let's take that differential, an extra $100, and just write a check, put it away. And by doing that, all of a sudden, that financial stewardship, you get to the point where you're 10, 15 years into the process, and your account statement shows up in the mail, and you go, hey, little Johnny or little Susie can go to a great college. Gee, hey, we're going to be able to retire at some point if we so choose. Now, our business, we never really retire, right? But in normal business, you retire at some point, right? My family on my father's side were all electricians. Your body gives out at about 50. Okay. So from a practical standpoint, whether you're in our industry or something else listening to this, you've got to save that money, and you've got to be a good steward of your money, because if you're not, you could have a problem. Another thing, right? Jesus said, render unto Caesar what's Caesar's, right? Most pictures on this coin, Caesar. Well, render unto him what's his. Pay your taxes. Network marketers, listen to me. Pay your taxes. It will catch up with you if you don't. I worked with a guy many years ago. The IRS eventually caught up to him. He was collecting disability payments in one state, living in another state, and his company puts him on the front cover of a magazine. Well, guess who else got a copy of that magazine? The Internal Revenue Service. And guess what happened to him? He had a big problem, okay? Don't be that guy. We hear about that all the time. Financial stewardship, pay your taxes, pay yourself first in the respect of taking care of A, your retirement, B, your children's education fund, and C, let me add a C to that, the rainy day fund, right? What happens? Okay, what happens if your company crashes and burns? What happens if your income drops because people leave? What happens if the economy does what it's done the last couple of years and goes the wrong way? Gas prices and food prices and utility prices double or triple. And all of a sudden it costs you a lot more money to live. Be prepared with financial stewardship in your working years. And if you do that, your non-working years can be glorious and fun rather than stressful. Nothing breaks my heart, Joe, more than when I walk into like a Walmart, for example, and I see a guy 75, 80 years old as a Walmart greeter. And part of me thinks, well, maybe the guy wants to be there. Maybe his spouse is deceased. Maybe he just wants the activity with other human beings. But realistically, they're there because they have to be there. Don't let that be you, people. You be the guy or the gal or the couple that says, hey, we did everything. We were pragmatic. You don't need a 15,000 square foot house, sorry, folks, for 2 people. It's impractical. Have a normal house. Pay your taxes. Pay yourself. Take care of those things. Put that money aside. Somebody asked me a long time ago, they said, how come you're not in a flash? I have no flash yet. Like, I wear my sports watch, and I've got this thing. It supposedly helps with balance or something. I don't know. But at the end of the day, that's my jewelry collection. I don't even wear my wedding ring because I go to the gym a lot. I don't want to ding it up. So they say, how come you never buy any of this stuff? Are you cheap? No, I'm not cheap. I'm practical. Who do I have to impress? There's one guy I need to impress every year. His name is Ernie Barbarese. He's my CPA and my other CPA, Mark, up in London, Ontario, where I file my Canadian taxes, right? Those 2 guys I want to impress every year where they go, wow, you had another good year. I want to impress those guys. Everybody else I can care less about. I'm not into this business to impress anybody. I'm here to lead people so that they can do the same thing. Good financial stewardship, good life long-term.
I did a blog post the other day that has gone viral because it resonated with a lot of people. And it's about the concept of momentum. And people are wondering, what does momentum have to do with financial aspects of what we're talking about? Well, I believe, and I've seen it over the years, is that network marketers have been addicted to momentum. Here's what happens, John, is as you know, momentum is not logical. Doesn't matter what business that you're in. There are going to be times where you're not in momentum, probably more times than you're in momentum. So what happens with many network marketers, that's new business people, the business just takes off because the Hollywood stage, we all been honeymoon stage. We've all been in that stage where we're newly married. That first year, everything is just incredible. But and same thing with a business. Either you're going into a new market, you're starting with a new company, your income takes off. You get to 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month. So what ends up happening is everything that you've just shared with everybody about financial stewardship. For example, that was the first thing that I did. When my kids were born, I was putting it into a college fund every single month. I didn't even look at it. By the time, my son just graduated with a master's. He's got a couple of degrees. My daughter is 2 degrees. That fund that I've been paying for all these years took care of all that. I didn't realize they were going to be career students so far. Now they're degree after degree, and education is important. The more you grow your mind, the more you're going to be able to deal with life, in a great way. So anyways, the concept of momentum. So what ends up happening is they start buying the cars. They will probably purchase a new home, a nice home. Their lifestyle grows with their income. But here is the challenge. There's going to be a down period. So for example, if you look at the growth curve in network marketing, when you go into a new country, that first 2 years, you're like, you do it right, you're escalating very quickly. Hockey stick curve. But eventually, there's going to be a time where it levels off and starts to go the other way. That's where the true leadership starts to work. The other ones will just leave and go on to the next deal. So what ends up happening with the momentum, why it's so harmful, that addiction to momentum, is as soon as there is a down period in the business, your leadership's always defined, not in good times, but in bad times or unstable times. So this is where you really need to work the business and really need to kick it into overdrive. Well, what ends up happening is now the mind starts to think, oh my God, I can't afford my lifestyle now. I'm making less than what my lifestyle is. I don't want to hurt my lifestyle because it's an ego thing. Okay? So now the mind starts to think, why isn't my downline working as hard as before? Oh, the company's made an error here. Now the mind starts to blame the company, starts to blame the team, where the blame should be centered on us. That's what leadership does. Is what am I doing to cause this? How can I get it into overdrive? So when at that moment, because it's fun to be in momentum, at that moment, their mind starts to look on Facebook and other social media platforms. Oh, look at that company is taking off. Look at what's going on there, and then you get pitched. And now times are tough. Financially, times are tough. So this new company probably is offering you a deal, or you're now thinking if I get into that momentum again, because it's going to be hard here. So they make the decision because of the momentum aspect, and they get into that new deal. And then the same cycle starts all over again. They get into momentum. Everything's so exciting. That first year, they're blasting it all over Facebook and social media platforms, and then those posts stop. And the whole cycle starts all over again. Because they've done it once, they're going to do it a second time, a third time, fourth time. Now it becomes just a habit, a way of doing business. I have seen people in this industry call themselves startup specialists. Okay, so think about that, and not to judge them, but you know what that means. Is I'm going to go here, develop it for a year, and I'm gone to the next thing. Next company is going to do the startup thing again and pay me to do that, that kind of thing. So listen to John, what he just shared with you on this financial stewardship, because if you do that, you're going to have an incredible longevity in this industry. You're going to have huge success long term, and money is going to be working for you rather than you chasing the money every year and trying to get that to pay what you're what you're doing with regards to your spending. So, we're coming up to an hour, John.
Well, that's that. I want to add a couple of things to that, though, Joe. There's a lot of wisdom in what you just said there. Number one, here's the difference between Warren Buffett and most people. Guys like Warren Buffett take an interest in interest. Wealthy people take an interest in interest. Poor people pay interest. It's a very different thing. Now, just think about it for a second. If you're paying a lot of interest on your credit cards and on other bills, perhaps that are overdue, you're not paying attention to interest. You got to pay attention to interest. Okay. Would you rather be earning it? Right now, interest rates are actually getting pretty good if you got money put away. They were really bad for a while. Now they're getting pretty good. They're getting good for all the wrong reasons, but they're getting good. If you got money put away, you'll make money on your money rate. Okay. So what's my other point on that? A number of years ago, Stuart Johnson, who's founder of Video Plus, which is now called Success something University, I think, here in Dallas, Stuart had an event, and he invited people who had made a certain amount of money in the industry to come to this event to be honored. And he was actually launching a magazine. I forget which magazine. Oh, Success Magazine. He bought it and was rebranding it. And anyway, so he invited me in because I qualified for this club financially. And I won't use the figure for FTC reasons, but it's a substantial amount of money, okay? And we're standing there, myself and Jeff Roberti and Dan McCormick and
Dan Cattle, my business partner, was
Dan Cattle was there. He's in that picture with me. Number of other people, okay? I can't think of everybody. And all of a sudden, so we're standing around. We all know each other for years, right? So we're standing around having a drink together and talking, catching up. And all of a sudden, here comes this big group of guys in and women in, about 18 or 19. And I said to Roberti, I said, hey, you know those guys, Jeff? He goes, I don't know who they are. I said, any of these other guys, anybody know who these guys are? Like, what company are they in? So all of a sudden, I see my friend John Addison walk in. Now, John is the then CEO or CFO of the company that these folks were in, okay, Primerica. And so there's about 40 of us that qualified for this amount of money. And there's more people in the industry, but just I think Larry Thompson was with us that night too. And I think Tish was with us. Anyway, a bunch of people. So anyway, I said to John, I said, are these your guys? He said, yeah. Now here's the funny part, Joe. When we think of the multi-level hitter, you couldn't name these guys and I couldn't either, okay? And the funny part is, you've been at your company 20 plus years. I've been at my company 20 plus years. We've got friends in the industry that are with companies, Jeff Roberti, 30 plus years in his company. Dan McCormick, I think he's at 30 plus years in his company. Some of the guys over at some of the older companies been there a long time. They're not industry names. If you went to another company, you said so-and-so or so-and-so in this company or that company, nobody knows who they are. And yet they've made fortunes in our industry. They've got the money put away. They've got great lives. They've got legacy businesses that they'll pass along to their children or grandchildren because they've done it right. The big multi-level names in our industry, they skip around, to your point. This year they're at this company because there's momentum. The momentum stops for whatever reason and they jump over to some other thing. 2 years later, the momentum stops there and they jump again. Are they hitters? No, because the people who follow them wind up broke. You make money in network marketing, plant your flag. Like you have with your great company, like I have with my great company, like some of our listeners have it theirs. And my suggestion to everybody, if you're in a good company that you're comfortable with, that the management's good, that the product is good, that the comp plan is fair, plant your flag, make that commitment to yourself and the most important people in your life, your spouse and your children, that you're going to stick around and you're going to build that business. Comes all the roller coasters. Because believe me, Joe and I could go on the roller coasters that he and I've been through with our companies for all these years, all the ups and downs and ownership change and management change and this change and that change. And it's called life, folks, okay? Stick to what you're doing. If you know it's the right thing, plant your flag in the ground and make that commitment like you have in your marriage, like you have to your faith. Make that commitment to your business. Joe's got the best advice of all. And I steal this from him all the time. He doesn't know it. I've been using it. Fall in love with your business. Like you did your spouse, like you did your children the day they were born. You fell in love with them, right? You didn't say, oh, you know what? They're not the best looking kids. I'm going to go get other kids. No, you stuck it out. Oh, they're going to get the best grades. You stuck it out. They're not the best athlete. You stuck it out. They're not whatever. You stuck it out and you made things work for them in their lives. That's what we do in our business, is you make that commitment.
And we'll end with this. Great show. Probably the best on leaving nothing to chance.
I think it's the host. I think we're going to change the host permanently.
I always tell people that when I got started, and you're going to share your success secret. When I got started, I fell in love with my dream. I knew exactly what I wanted because that's the key to life. But I made a commitment that I would never quit. You know, John, that's 30 years later, I've never quit on anybody. That's what I'm most proud of. I've never quit on a company. I've never quit on anybody, any of my downline members, business partners, family. Again, I'm very loyal, but I made a commitment that I was going to see it through. It's very difficult to do that because you need to have faith. I'm stubborn when it comes to this. I think in as human beings, we tend not to follow through. Remember in the 50s, in the 60s, I was born in the mid-60s, and my dad would lend money to friends. And back then, you didn't need to sign a contract. Mm-hmm. Word was the most important, because if your word was nothing, you were in trouble in society, no matter if you lived in the United States or Canada or wherever in the world. So we have to understand that the word is our only power, the word to ourselves. I made a commitment to myself and my family that I would never quit on my dream. I would never quit on my company. I would never quit on anybody. I was going to see it through no matter what. That enabled me, because I could never, if I were to quit on something or someone or company or whatever, I would never be able to live with myself, because I knew the only power I have as a human being is my word, especially to myself. So when you break your word for anybody, the person that you're hurting the most is yourself. So that commitment and falling in love with my dream are my top two, and consistency is my top three reasons why I am 30 years later. It served me well. So why don't you leave? We'll end with this. Your top three success secrets and the longevity.
I would say number one is, and you just said the word commitment. What's your commitment? Okay. What's your commitment to excellence? Okay. People say to me all the time, different friends of mine that are in the industry, and we're all about retirement age. Some of them are retired already. And they'll say, well, when are you going to retire? The day when I don't think that I have any impact on other people's lives will be the day I retire. Well, Joe, I hope that's the day when they're slamming the box on me, you know what I mean? And I'm laying down and my eyes are closed. When I stop having that impact, that positive impact on other human beings, whether in my company, whether in your company, whether in another company, whether they're new to the industry, okay? That's what I feel like it's time to stop. I made that commitment to people a long time ago. Secondly, I believe in giving back. This is a giving back business, okay? What probably kept me somewhat humble through the years was I've always been an athlete. When I was younger, I was very involved with judo, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, and sambo. And that's...
John, that's not an athlete.
I know. Yeah. You haven't seen me get up in the morning. You could go, there are times I wish I hadn't done all that. And I would step across the mat, be it in training or be it in a competition, against people with all different backgrounds. And all of a sudden, it didn't matter that I was making X amount of dollars in network marketing. Nobody cared, right? You step across the mat from a guy who's a truck driver, okay, or a school teacher or whatever that doesn't make that kind of money. He cares less what you did. He's going to try to whoop you, okay, if he can, or vice versa. So it taught me to be very humble, because there's always somebody better than you. But here's the lesson out of that.
Well, you got commitment, being humble,
and being humble and being willing. The third one, okay, is to be a student continuously. I am still reading, I read voraciously. All right. I mean, at any given time, like nutrition has become a passion of mine in the last few years. I read everything on nutrition that I can possibly get my hands on. I listen to podcasts on everything that I possibly can. I'm on Facebook groups with all kinds of stuff. Some stuff that I don't even, some of these people are a little out there, but I'll read what they have to say, even if I don't necessarily agree or understand it. But I want to be open to constantly educating myself, being open to new ideas for my life, not just for my business. My business is a microcosm of the totality of my life. So I'm constantly a student. I'm back, reading some stuff that Dan Kennedy just put out, the great Dan Kennedy, the great copywriter, the best of the best when it comes to copywriting. I'm reading some stuff that Dan just put together recently. And I'm constantly refreshing myself on some of the things I've read in the past and things that I'm currently reading that I haven't read before. Why? Because my best years are ahead of me. I could look at it and say, hey, 40 years, I've made a lot of money. I could stop if I wanted to. But at the end of the day, I'm not going to impact anybody. And without those new ideas and without learning some new skills, without learning, for example, about things like AI, for example, that we talked about on last week's show. When you see this, folks, there'll be another show that will have aired. And Scott Erickson, my good friend, who's a world-class athlete, as well as a electrical engineer, talks about AI. We got to know about AI. Whether we want to know about AI or not, we got to know about it. Why? Because it's going to be part of our business. It is part of our business already. So anyway, all I'm saying to you is this. The third thing is constantly be getting educated. Just like you talked about your kids, your students, my kids, your students. Great. Constantly be feeding that mind because, and I'll close with this show. Ben Franklin, one of the smartest people I think who ever lived, said, take the coins from your pocket and fill your mind.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Okay, doesn't get better than that.
Great. Well, I got about 100 other questions, but we'll leave that for another time.
Well, we'll do this again, I'm sure.
It's been an excellent, fantastic show. And again, this has not been scripted at all. But I sat down 5 minutes before we were going to do the show and go, okay, what am I going to ask John? And I just said, look, whatever comes out, I'm going to ask him. So, awesome, John.
Joe, you've been a great host. I thank you for doing this, and I'm sure we will do it again.
See you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Solleder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.